So I'm going to do something a little bit different this year. We've been evolving a lot as an organization over the past decade or so, and particularly in the last few years. And about a year ago, given the state of the world, we decided it was time to create a new strategic vision and have gone on to create Bioneers 3.0. So I want to kind of give you a little bird's eye view of what we've been up to and where we are these days. But I want to take the scenic route, starting with a Bioneer's eye view of the world, and then share just a snapshot of our history and just a few highlights of the current sort of new and emerging work. The plot. We've been acting like a rock star trashing a hotel room, and it's the morning after. But this hotel is planet Earth. The guest rules are non-negotiable, and if we don't change our ways fast, management may just vote us off the island. According to the UN, we can no longer count on the ability of the planet's ecosystems to sustain future generations. This is new territory. Honey, we shrunk the planet. If we've made one basic systems error as a civilization, it's the illusion that we're apart from rather than a part of nature. Prior civilizations have met their demise by cutting down forests, eroding topsoil, and building burgeoning cities in dry areas that ran short of water. Sometimes hastened by climate change, the ensuing disintegration occurred suddenly, in a decade or two after a society reached its pinnacle of population, wealth, and power. When Jared Diamond examined the demise of Mexico's Mayan civilization, he identified the final unraveling thread as political leadership. You'll enjoy this quote. Their attention was evidently focused on the short-term concerns of enriching themselves, waging wars, erecting monuments, competing with one another, and extracting enough food from the peasants to support all these activities. Sound familiar? Our ways of living are specifically adapted to our current circumstances, such as climate, the abundance of cheap energy and cheap fresh water, rapid population growth, and even more rapid economic growth. These preferences are not easily adaptable if and when our circumstances change. Climate change is propelling both natural and human systems everywhere towards their tipping points. Societies slide into crisis when slammed by multiple shocks or stressors at the same time. As Mark Linus wrote, if we'd wanted to destroy as much of life on Earth as possible, there would have been no better way of doing it than to dig up and burn as much fossil hydrocarbons as we possibly could. The nature of nature is change, but sometimes it hurtles into fast forward, tripping radical shifts. Scientists call it nature's regime shift. For the first time, people are causing it on a planetary scale. It can be irreversible, at least on a human time frame. When people talk about saving the Earth, we would better frame it as saving ourselves. Ecology is founded on limits, yet the single most important idea driving the destruction is the ideology of unlimited economic growth. As Kenneth Boulding said, anyone who believes exponential growth can go on forever on a finite planet is either a madman or an economist. And as the Archbishop of Canterbury said, the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. Every major empire over the past several hundred years has undergone a predictable cycle of collapse. The hallmarks are always the same. The financialization of the economy, moving from manufacturing to speculation, the casino, very high levels of debt, extreme economic inequality, and costly military overreaching. Every empire has had an idiosyncratic ability to exploit a particular energy source that propelled its rise to economic power. No empire has been able to manage the transition to the next energy source. The climate imperative today is to transition off fossil fuels worldwide, and it requires the most complex collaboration and urgent passage in the history of human civilization. Nothing like it has ever been done. As Paul Gilding writes in The Great Disruption, the science says we've physically entered a period of great change, a synchronized related crash of the economy and the ecosystem. The Great Disruption will ultimately take human society to a higher evolutionary state. We have the opportunity to build a society that represents our highest capacities, that works with rather than against nature. This crisis presents what may be a once-in-a-civilization opportunity. The severity of the crisis will drive a global response that's mammoth in scale and speed, including the biggest economic and industrial transformation in history. The sooner we shift, the more options and the less pain we'll have. As Paul Hawken observes, for the first time in history, a civilization, its people, companies, and governments, is trying to arrest the downspin and understand how to live on Earth, a watershed in human existence. From chaos theory to the Gaia hypothesis, a new cosmology is unfolding. In this paradigm, the Earth does not revolve around us. The plot thickens. To move from breakdown to breakthrough, we're entering the age of nature. This revolution from the heart of nature leads with a basic shift in our relationship with nature, from resource and object to mentor, model, and partner. It's time to learn the ground rules and how to play by them. As Janine Benyus points out, nature's done everything we want to do without mining the past, polluting the planet, or mortgaging the future. The principles appear simple. Nature runs on current sunlight. Nature banks on diversity. Nature rewards cooperation. Nature builds from the bottom up. Nature recycles everything. Life creates conditions conducive to life. The solutions are largely present. Where we don't know what to do, we have a very good idea what directions to head in. And the solutions residing in nature consistently surpass our conception of what's possible. Nature also has a profound capacity for healing, and we can act as healers, and we'll see a lot of that today. The age of nature calls for a new social contract of interdependence. Taking care of nature means taking care of people, and taking care of people means taking care of nature. When huge shocks transform the landscape, structures and institutions crumble, releasing tremendous amounts of bound-up energy and resources for renewal and reorganization. Novelty emerges. It's a period of creativity, freedom, and transformation. These times belong to those who learn, innovate, and adapt. The name of the game is resilience, the capacity of both human and ecological systems to absorb disturbance and still retain their basic function and structure, or to transform to meet the new management. The heart of resilience is diversity. Damaged ecosystems rebound to health when they have sufficient diversity. So do societies. Resilience teaches us decentralized systems and create backups and redundancies. Think decentralized power grids and food systems. Build community and networks. Enduring relationships and networks hold cultural memory the same way seeds regenerate after a forest fire. Empower local communities to solve their own problems. Governance works best when it's closest to the ground. Real wealth creation is based on replenishing natural systems and restoring the built environment, especially our infrastructure and cities. It's based on investing in our communities and workforce. Restoration is an estimated $100 trillion market. Every dollar we spend on pre-disaster risk management will prevent $7 in later losses. It's only a question of when, not if, the world will change course with the equivalent of a wartime mobilization, but this time to restore people and nature. The revolution has begun. It's the sunrise of an ecologically literate and just civilization. Just as economics is driving the destruction, it needs to power the restoration and transform the economy from a vicious circle to a virtuous circle. According to George Soros, there's no better potential driver that pervades all aspects of our economy than a new energy economy. Renewable energy is reaching a tipping point worldwide and going mainstream. Energy efficiency improvements alone can reduce emissions by as much as 50% by 2030 with no net cost. The Department of Defense has elevated climate change as a top national and global security issue. It's developing technologies and approaches that can be transferred to society as it did with the computer industry. Historic demographic shifts are fertilizing the landscape. The convergence of the environmental and justice movements is demonstrating that peace with the earth can be achieved only when justice is achieved. It's a process that never ends. Women's leadership is ascendant. As Hannah Rosen wrote, those societies that take advantage of the talents of all of their adults, not just half of them, have pulled away from the rest. What were they thinking, future generations will ask? The book, Why Smart People Can Be So Stupid, suggests that smartness is not the opposite of stupidity. The opposite of stupidity is wisdom, defined as the ability to apply knowledge to achieve the common good. This shift can and must advance decisively in the next several urgent years. As Winston Churchill said, it's no use saying we're doing our best. We've got to succeed in doing what's necessary. Hence Bioneers 3.0, seeding solutions for reimagining civilization in the age of nature. First, just a little brief background, Bioneers 1.0, the creation story. 1988, Dr. James Hansen testifies before Congress as the Paul Revere of global warming. He warns we have the decade of the 90s to avert climate catastrophe by making the immediate transition to a low-carbon society. 1990, responding to the urgency, Nina Simons and I found the first Bioneers Conference in Santa Fe to gather biological pioneers demonstrating practical and visionary solutions for people and planet. It begins under the auspices of Seeds of Change, the backyard biodiversity, a company that I co-founded with Gabriel Howarth a year earlier. The conference frames the environment as the mother of all issues. We take a solve-the-whole-problem approach across the arc of the human endeavor, grounded in values of justice, equity, diversity, and democracy. The premise, the solutions are largely present, inspired by nature's operating instructions. What are needed are widespread education, political will, and economic muscle. The initial impulse, education, communications, and media. When people discover that viable alternatives exist, it radically leverages the pressure for change. From the outset, our purpose is to connect people with solutions and each other. Nature's primary form of organization is networks. Bioneers emerges as a diverse network of networks. Outgrowing facilities in Santa Fe, the conference moves to the San Francisco Bay Area in 1993. By 97, it grows to 800 people. During these years, Bioneers operates as a volunteer organization. In 1997, facing a $10,000 shortfall, we confront extinction. In December 97, an unsolicited angel donor, Susanna Dakin, gives us a 5-year, $1 million grant. And Sue Dakin is here with us this weekend, and you'll hear from her tomorrow. We treated the money as seed capital to grow Bioneers 2.0. 1999, the conference moves here to the Marin Center in San Rafael, quickly growing to over 3,000 attendees. 1999, fresh down from her tree sit, Julia Butterfly sees fewer than 10 young people at the conference and helps us launch the youth program. And today we have hundreds of young people here. We launched a suite of communications and media products and channels. 2001, the radio series premieres on 120 stations. In 2011, excuse me, it's on over 400 stations with US market coverage, over 110 million listeners, and in 11 other countries. And this past year, it won 12 national and international awards. 2002, we launched Beaming Bioneers community conferences at 5 sites with a few hundred people. And as you heard today, we have a record-breaking 23 sites with an estimated 10,000 people. 2004, we launched the anthology book series, which now has 6 titles and is starting to be used widely in schools. 2007, Bioneers is a central advisor to Leonardo DiCaprio's 11th Hour film, which features about 30 Bioneers to global audiences. We provide an ongoing source for the media and journalists, including the protagonist for Michael Pollan's best-selling Omnivore's Dilemma book. 2006, Nina begins the Cultivating Women's Leadership trainings to increase the capacity of diverse women leaders for progressive environmental and social change with Toby Hertzlig and Akaya Windwood. Yes. 2007, Dreaming New Mexico begins as a resilience strategy to design an operational state-level template for systemic restoration at the local and regional level, and was selected in 2009 as the first runner-up in the Buckminster Fuller Challenge Award. 2008, we launched Bioneers Global. In 2010, we had the first Bioneers Global in Holland, as well as a beaming Bioneers at Findhorn in Scotland, and participated in Hong Kong in the Chinese Climate Dialogue and Global C40 Conference. 2008, the Indigenous Tent launches at the conference here, and has now grown into the Native-directed and led Indigenous Forum in partnership with the Cultural Conservancy and Indigenous Environmental Network. And in 2008, we deepened our partnerships with formal education networks and groups to create an educators hub and programs at the conference and to bring Bioneers to classrooms and libraries. 2010, the conference webcast draws 40,000 unique viewers. So in September of last year, to meet the escalating breakdown and unprecedented breakthrough in the world, we begin creating Bioneers 3.0. And we've redesigned into essentially 3 program areas of education, ecological literacy education, place-based restoration, and leadership development. And we're building on our core work over these many years of education and media networks. And I just want to share just a couple of highlights. There's much more than we can get into, obviously, but in the public education arena, we're in the process of completing Bioneers Net, a dynamic year-round media platform that'll be sort of like having the conference all year round, including breaking news, insider views, aggregated media from all of you and from the networks, and lots of other media. And thanks to all of you who are contributing to that site. Yeah, thank you. The forthcoming Bioneers media catalog is going to feature themed sets with some of the greatest hits of plenaries and radio shows, as well as books and other media. And today here, the first one out of the gate, the Indigeneity Essentials box set is available. And this weekend, we're really excited. We're convening a founding gathering of invited education thought leaders to explore the formation of a National Education for Action network. Networks run the world, so this is the direction. And with Scott Spann, they're mapping the educational system and identifying key leverage points for real transformation, collaboration, and action. And please drop by the Educator Pavilion where you can see this process unfolding. They're actually mapping it, and it's a prototype to do this with other networks, hopefully next year and in the future. In response to many requests, the Dreaming New Mexico project, we've just completed or almost completed a methodology because people have asked us how we went about this mapping process. So for other communities that want to look at the age of renewables and the age of local food sheds, that'll be available very soon. And we're also adapting all those materials into study guides and lesson plans for schools that are action-based. And with Dreaming New Mexico also, with support from Google Incorporated Charitable Giving Fund at the Tides Foundation, we're collaborating with Rebecca Moore and the Google Earth team and the Navajo Advocates and New Energy Economy to map the practical potential for implementing solar energy on Navajo Nation. According to Scientific American, the 95 square mile area at Four Corners that's on Navajo Nation has enough concentrated solar power to supply the entire US electricity grid. We could end coal in the region within a decade and create a lot of green jobs. Meanwhile, the Indigenous Forum keeps growing and getting stronger, and we warmly welcome all the Native leaders who are here with us. We're deeply honored that you come to be with us. And we are very honored to have our first 2 tribal sponsors, who I mentioned earlier, the Saboba and San Miguel tribes from here in California. Thank you so much. And we're going to be releasing a larger indigeneity media catalog that will go out to Indian country and to tribes and communities, within the next year. And then lastly, thanks to a visionary donor's seed funding, this year we're designing a formal mentorship program. It'll tap the Bioneers community of leadership to mentor gifted young and emerging leaders from diverse disciplines and backgrounds, and we hope to pilot that in 2012. So those are some of the highlights. Now, as Groucho Marx said, why should we bother about the next generation? They've never done anything for us. Call me a Marxist, but... So there you have it. This is the keyhole, really, to shift from breakdown to breakthrough. It's showtime. This is really it, everybody. It's not a hype. It's not a fundraising strategy. I believe with total conviction that the next 5 or 6 years are going to be the most important years in the entire history of human civilization. Probably the greatest challenge that we face is shifting the mindscape. And it comes down in many ways to a choice between resignation and hope. As we Bioneers know, there's profound hope in the healing power of nature, which is extraordinary, and in the incredible people who are creating ingenious solutions with such bottomless heart, courage, and imagination. We'll witness it up close and personal here, over the coming days. As David Orr puts it, hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. Hopeful people are actively engaged in defying the odds and changing the odds. You are the hope. Look around. Bioneers is a community of leadership, and in this time we're all called upon to be leaders. We honor all of you for being here and for your remarkable leadership, your spirit, and love. To move successfully from breakdown to breakthrough, the time to act is now. As Sarah Kroll said, the way we're going to hold it together is to hold it together. Future generations are counting on us. Thank you.